Good afternoon, committee members. We'll get started. If you want to get to your seats, I'll give you a minute to get here. Welcome to the Intergovernmental Committee for November 17th. Today's agenda has one item, and that is the council standing committees and streamlining council roles. There is a packet. There's information in the packet. We may have some additional information coming from folks that are here today, maybe from administration or council clerk if there's additional information. And we just ask if you have information you want to share with us, just hand it up to Vicki and we'll get it passed out. At this time, since I put the item into the committee and I was on the initial standing subcommittee, I'm going to hand the chair over to my co-chair, or my vice chair, I guess it's called, and give the report out of the actual subcommittee, and then I'll re-chair at that point and then direct today's conversation. Councilmember Feigl. Thank you. In your packet, I included the information that I submitted was a memo. It's a 2-page memo that talks about the work of the subcommittee. I hope you've had an opportunity to review that memo. It is a synopsis of the PowerPoint presentation that was presented at, I believe it was a committee of the whole, maybe at about November of last year. And so we wanted to kind of give you a brief, put that in visual for you to give you a background, especially for those council members that weren't on at that time. And I'd be happy to answer any questions you have about that particular memo. But I also included some other things that I thought would be helpful in giving you background, and that was on page 3 of the packet, the proposed recommendations of the standing committee. And this is just, kind of in a bullet point format for you. Also included the KLC research. Many of you may not know this, but Joe Ewalt with Kentucky League of Cities came in and did that research for us for the comparable cities, and we chose cities that were of similar size or were merged government or of similar size, and also that were within traveling range, just in case we needed to go and kind of see how things worked. So that information is included there for you. The top part of that sheet talks about their demographic data, and the second part of that sheet on page 4 is actually about their government and their population, their number of council members, what type of government they have, their numbers of standing committees, and who chairs what meetings. So we thought that was helpful, and it was helpful as we looked at as we've heard it before, our unicorn system of government here and how we do things a little bit different, kind of looking at how other municipalities do their legislative work. And then included in the packet is the resolution that the standing committee or the subcommittee came up with, and that is included in here, and that will be the basis of our conversation today, at least as I chair the meeting. I like the format that Councilmember Gordon used when we were dealing with the student housing issues, which we kind of took it issue by issue, and that way we could figure out if there was agreement, we could go ahead and move on from that issue. If there were things that needed to be dealt with more in depth, we could spend that time on that, or know that we needed to come back later and do that. So that's the format that I'll be pursuing as a chair. Does anybody have any questions regarding the memo? And I'll step out of that role if no one has any questions, and then go back into the chair of Intergovernmental Committee. Okay. You give it back to me?
I'd like to pass the gavel back to you.
Thank you very much. Okay. So if it's okay with everyone, we'll go through, on page 5 of our packet begins the resolution. And everything that is new is in bold and underlined, and everything that's crossed out is the old language. So I'm just going to go through, and if I skip one over, please just kind of yell out at me. But I thought I would just deal with it section by section. Everybody okay with that? Okay. So on page 6 is the first change. Section 2.101 has to do with appointments of committees. The change is from the term of the vice mayor making the appointment to a term of 2 years to coincide with the terms of the district council members. And if you have questions, concerns, or anything about this, or I don't know at this point, I'll take a recommendation from the committee. If this is something, if we'd like to move approval for this particular change, I would even open the floor for motions to accept that particular change of the resolution.
Second.
We've got a motion and a second to accept the change of the appointments of committees to coincide with the terms of the district council members. Is there any discussion? Please push your button if you'd like to weigh in. All right, no discussion. All in favor of that change, please say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Okay, that's good. All right, the next change is in section 2.102, and this is where we talk about I'll read it. This actually changes the standing committees from the 4 standing committees that we have right now to the standing committees that are listed here. And for the sake of the public watching, I'm going to read these standing committees out. This changes, let's see. As soon as possible after the election of the vice mayor should make appointments, and actually we need to change that because that won't be based on the change we just made. We'll need to make that change as well. But based on the term, the appointments are still made, I'm sorry. So the vice mayor should make appointments to the standing committees as required by these rules. The planning, social services, general government, public safety, public works, and environmental quality committees shall consist of 5 council members. And I'm going to stop at that particular change because we have other changes in that section. Is there any discussion or motion on that? Councilmember Blues.
Thank you. On the question of the are we talking about the number of council members per committee or the committees themselves?
We're talking about the number of council members on the committee.
Okay, and the question would be whether that is going to be adequate. We had back when this issue was and the whole question of reorganization was brought up, we had a good list of points to discuss from former council member Blevins, and he made the observation that 5 might be a difficult number for us always to have a quorum and to get the business of the committees done. Now, I don't have a motion to make on that, but I think it's something that we should discuss, whether 5-member committees are adequate, and so we might go back to the rationale for that number.
Okay. Is there anybody from that committee that would like to respond? Since I'm the chair of the Intergov, is there, George, you participated in that?
I guess I'd say that we looked at the research on a lot of other cities and what they were doing. Almost all of our meetings are on Tuesdays, so it shouldn't be hard to reach a quorum on Tuesday because we're all expected to be here on Tuesdays anyway. So I don't think that would be, when the committee looked at it, we didn't think that was going to be an issue. But we also looked at what other cities were doing, and one of the things we found that was the biggest problem was that most cities don't have 2/3 of their council on a committee. And we also looked at the fact that we have our links committees, and they have 3 members, and they do adequate research that the whole council depends on to make its recommendation and then vote on their recommendation for the budget each year. So we looked at it in-depthly and didn't see any reason why 5 would be problematic. But we also found reasons why 5 would work good, and that was because of the number of committees that we had and how it worked out.
Thank you.
Thank
I'm not remembering what the quorum would be.
Quorum would be 3.
3.
Also, just for your reference, and maybe you've already seen this, but on page 4, we did, on that chart that has the comparable cities, if you look at the total number of council members versus the number of council members on each of the standing committees, it kind of puts in perspective their percentages. Councilmember Gorton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate the opportunity to speak as I'm not a member of this committee. I'm not sure exactly how I feel about the number 5, so I'm glad that Councilmember Blues brought it up for discussion. When our subcommittee met, I remember having a few concerns that 10 council members would not have necessarily been involved in the committee work. And I thought that was a lot of council members who wouldn't have had input to bring the issues forward. I'm not sure 10 is the right number, but I'm feeling like 5 is very few. And so that raised the question as to whether we would get to the full council with a lot of issues and have the work being done by the standing committees. And because a lot of council members hadn't had input, the issues went down. So I don't know how important that is. I think it's not important in my mind to consider how many committees we have to serve on. I think that should be a low priority, and maybe a number like 7 would be enough to get a critical balance, but not too many. So that's just my comment.
Thank you, Councilmember Gorton. Councilmember Feigl.
Thank you, Chair. My question really was, I actually had 2 things. So this is the intergovernmental committee that you're going to rename that committee?
No, it's actually, they're abolishing, the names of intergovernmental and services will be gone, and we'll have the new names of social services, general government, public safety, public works, environmental quality, planning, and budget and finance.
All in one committee?
No, those are all
Okay.
separate.
Oh, I got you now. Okay, those will be the individual.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Yeah, it's just a renaming.
I gotcha.
Did you want to weigh in on the number issue?
Well, the other thing I wanted to ask is, since I wasn't here when this discussion took place, I'm just trying to figure out what was the motivation for decreasing the number of people on a committee.
Just to reiterate what Councilmember Meyer said, we looked at the comparable cities and the way in which they legislate it. And when you look, we had a very high percentage of people on our standing committees. It also helped, in reference to what Councilmember Gorton said, it helped to keep the involvement on standing committees similar to what it is now. So you would still serve on 2 or 3, as opposed to if you had 7 committee members, you would probably have to serve on 3 or 4. So we took that into account.
Okay. So workload.
Yes,
basically.
that too. Yes. Councilmember Myers.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd also say that we also discussed the fact that all these meetings are open, and just like even when we have 10 members on committees, we have council members that attend different meetings, even though they're not a member of that committee, it would still be the same, that any council member could come to the meeting if they chose to. Also, we also thought that it would focus the group more, and that, quite frankly, with less people on the committee, everybody would be more focused and more accountable for doing the work that the committee was supposed to do, because there's fewer people there to get it done.
I think you referenced the Links Committee before, and that was the same kind of thing with thought processes. Where is the effectiveness of the committees? Where do we see it working well? And how many numbers are on that? And came up with three for the Links Committees and upped it to 5 for standing.
Right, and really looked at the fact that when we come back at budget time the council, the full council really does take a strong consideration and recommendation from those link committees, even though there's only 3 of them, and that means 12 members weren't a part of that discussion. So again, we think that 5 will work out really well.
Thank you. Councilmember Blues?
Thank you. I think that if a quorum is in a 5-person committee is going to be 3, I'm a little uneasy about 1/5 of the council vetting an issue and then presenting it to the full council. I think that we all would recognize that as we increase the number of standing committees, council members are going to have to step up and be present. So I move that we make the quorum 4.
Is there a second? Is there a second on that? Okay. There's a motion and a second, and if you'd like to discuss, please hit your button. Councilmember Myers.
I seconded it for discussion more than that I would be in favor of the motion. And I guess my question would be, if you have a quorum of 4 and 4 are present, who breaks the tie? Or what do you do in that case?
Well, that's a good point. I would say that how do we do it now? If there is a tie, we could say that any motion that doesn't get a majority would fail. Period.
Councilmember Lawless.
Maybe we could split the difference and make the committee 6, with 4 being a quorum. My concern is that, in the last few weeks, we've had several council members who have had either personal or health issues and haven't been able to be here. So if we have a committee of 5 and 2 people are sick, that's a big deal. That means no business can be done. So maybe we could, instead of, half the people are suggesting 5-member committee and some of the people are suggesting a 7-member committee, maybe we could split the difference and make it 6 with 4 being a quorum.
4 is open for motions. Councilmember Myers.
I guess my question would be, we all recognize that the links have 3 people on them, and we all recognize that those links do their work every year. The council takes into consideration what they say when they report out. So those who want to change the number from 5 to any other number, I guess my question to you would be, what is different about the links and the fact that we take the recommendation from a link committee of 3 that creates a problem when we have 5?
Councilmember Gordon.
I have just a quick comment about the number 6. I think, well, I think that it becomes difficult when we make a committee have an even number of people. That's why most committees have an odd number. I mean, 10 is an even number, but the quorum is 6. But I think if you have 6, you're more likely to have more tie votes. I'm not really, I think whatever we work out will work well. I do have a response about the links. The links are short-term. They're totally focused on the budget, and they're not focused on bringing a variety of legislation forward that needs input in many different ways. So I think there is a pretty big difference in the links and the standing committees. But it seems to me 3 people as a quorum is pretty low for bringing something forward to 15 people, but maybe it will work.
Thank you. Councilmember Blues.
I would just underline what Councilmember Gorton said, that links committees are narrowly focused and short-term, and our standing committees will be more wide-ranging than that. So I'm perfectly content with with the number 5, but I would like to see the quorum at 4. So I'm ready to vote on that.
Was there a motion?
No, if others are.
Okay. I have a recommendation. One of the things I think that we agree on is that we agree on increasing the standing committees. And so let me bring forward the reading of this in this manner, that we create, the standing committees would be as such: the Planning Committee, Social Services, General Government, Public Safety, Public Works, and Environmental Quality, and Budget and Finance, and offer that as an opportunity for a motion to accept that change. Oh, I'm sorry, the motion is still, I'm sorry. There is a motion still on the floor. I apologize. Is there any more discussion on that motion? This is the one that's the quorum of 4. Right? All in favor of the motion to change the quorum to 4, say aye. Any opposed?
No.
Okay. It fails. Any other motions?
Anybody not having a
Are there any other motions regarding the standing committees and or the number of council members per standing committee? Councilman or Vice Mayor?
I have just a point of clarification or question. Would environmental quality take the place of today's water quality committee? Have we just, I can't remember.
It would be included. There would be an opportunity to include water quality under environmental quality. And Councilmember Blues and I have had that discussion. Councilmember Blues?
The assumption, I think, is that the Water Resources Oversight Committee would be, as it were, folded in to or subsumed by the Environmental Quality Committee. Yes.
Okay. So the essence is in that we would be moving from 4 standing committees, but if you include Water Resources today, it's very active, meets once a month, routinely, same as the committee meetings. So you could actually say that we've got 5 effectively today, standing committees, at least, right?
At least, if you're wanting to call, because we have plenty of,
okay, yeah, right.
yeah, we have lots of committees.
And that, if we're going to be effective, I would say that will continue, that we will have more working committees. So, but we would be going then from today 5 active committees at this level to 7?
Yes, that's correct. Yes,
Budget and Finance?
Budget and Finance.
Well,
1,
One.
2,
That's what I'm
3,
trying to-
4, 5, 6, 7.
7 with budget and finance.
Planning, Social Services,
after.
General Government, Public Safety, Public Works, Environmental Quality, and Budget.
there should be a comma after Public Works then, because that Public Works is separate
Oh, okay,
from-
I see what you're
right?
saying. Yeah,
You're right.
sorry about that.
Okay. 7th
You're
is
right.
Budget and Finance.
The Planning, Social Services, General Government, Public Safety, Public Works, Environmental Quality, and Budget, Budget and Finance. Councilmember
off-
Henson, I'm sorry.
Yeah, just a parenthetical observation, just from the experience of making these appointments, which actually becomes not so much making appointments, but encouraging and getting, finding the willingness of members to serve on multiple committees. This is my experience, as vice mayor, in having made the appointments, that I'm just trying to work this through. Is it going to be more or less difficult to get the willing agreement to serve on the committees? We're still just talking about an average of 2 committees per council member,
2 and 3 for some, yes.
Right.
The same as it is now.
which is what it is now, right? Okay.
Councilmember Henson?
Thank you, Chair. I was just curious what would happen with outside agencies. Would that committee remain, or would it also be included?
It's recommended to go under social services.
Okay. And I know some of the outside agencies are not all social service,
That's correct.
so, but it would still go under that.
That's correct.
Okay. Have we looked at items in committee currently and determined like how many items would be under each of these committees?
Paul, do you want to comment on that?
Not really at present, no.
Because I was just curious, I was thinking, very rarely do we, of course, with outside agencies included, but rarely would we have something in committee related to social services. None that I can think of.
Before you came on council, we had couple of items at least, but they weren't ever able to be heard because of the planning issues took
Okay.
precedent.
Okay. But I would just be curious to see how many items would there be items in committee currently that would not fall into one of these committees?
Councilmember Myers can respond to you on that one.
Thank you, Madam Chair. One of the things that, when I actually put this into committee the very first time, the mayor had said when he came into office that he would like to see the standing committees sort of mirror the divisions of government. And that's kind of where we started when we looked at, what issues are out there, what issues the council deals with on a regular basis, and then how is our government set up. And the exact example that you're bringing up is social services was problematic because social services, for some reason, was supposed to report to planning, which makes no sense. And with planning and all the issues that they deal with and the importance of those issues, it just never made it on the docket. For example, the Social Services Commissioner is supposed to report to that committee on a regular basis, and that has almost never happened, except I think Councilman Stinnett asked one time for her to come in and report, but it's just never happened because there's not time. And so the impetus for this was partially because the administration thought that it would be good to mirror the government. I thought that as well, and that's kind of why we moved in that direction.
And I would agree. I think this is a great idea that our standing committees mirror the structure of our government. And I like that part of it, but I was just curious of maybe some items that we currently have in committee to make sure that they are addressed and that they would fall into one of these committees. And just to put my 2 cents worth in on the number, I think 5 is too low. 4 or 5 would be a good quorum if the number were 7 or 8. So that's my 2 cents. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Lawless?
I'm wondering if some of these, and I don't know, I know that planning and serving on the planning committee, we deal with so many issues. And I guess some of the issues we deal with would then be in like public safety or public works rather than in planning. Like, I can't think of anything right now, but yeah. Right, code enforcement issues would be in public safety, like that. Yeah, and building so I I'd like to make a motion that we adopt this with 6 members on each committee and 10 on budget and finance.
There's a motion. Is there a second? Motion and a second. Any discussion? I have names here on my screen, so just raise your hand if you want to discuss this particular one. Councilmember Gorton. Then Councilmember Blues.
I think I was next
Is this
on
on
the
this
list.
motion?
Well, I'm a little confused. We're talking about the number of members of each committee.
Councilmember Lawless made a motion to
It'd be
accept
6 persons on.
the naming of the new standing committees and make 6 members with a quorum of. Did you specify a quorum, Diane? No quorum specified.
4.
With a quorum of 4.
I think that's a kind of arbitrary number. I tend to agree that 5 will work. I was worried about the quorum question, but that's been rejected by the committee. So I'm perfectly content to stay with the 5 number. I will want to address next, I think, a thornier question, that is the number of standing committees that we should have.
Okay, that probably needs to be addressed at this point because part of her motion is accepting the standing committees as presented in the proposal.
Oh, then I'll continue.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Well, and this is a question, and that is, since as a council we've been increasingly concerned with economic development, economic development is not as proposed, a standing committee. And since we are anxious, I gather, to be more focused in our committee work, whether an economic development standing committee should not be added to the mix. I'm sure you've probably considered this, and maybe you can give me a bit of background on how economic development would fit into the proposed new structure.
I can respond, or Councilmember Myers or Councilmember Gorton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess I would say that in light of the changes that we've made in putting together that task force and the different things that we've tried to do and to focus on economic development, it makes perfect sense to go ahead and put an economic development standing committee in place.
You have a comment back on that at all?
So you would be amenable to having a...
Absolutely. Amenable. Amendable.
Amenable.
I'm amenable to the amendable part of that.
Okay.
Well, in that case, then, we'll have a little problem here voting on Councilmember Lawless's motion as made, because it compounds and combines the number of committees with the number of members of committees.
You're welcome at any point to make an amendment, or any other committee member at this time could do that.
I move that we add an additional standing committee, which would be economic development.
Second.
All right, we've got a motion and a second, which I'm not sure how that works. Could it not have just been an amendment to? Okay. Any discussion about the amendment? Councilmember Feigl?
Just to clarify things for me, I thought that we had recently decided that the entire council would be the Economic Development Task Force. Is that not correct?
At this point, that's the way it's always been. It wasn't a recent decision. It's just always been that way.
But that the Economic Development Task Force had not been meeting for quite some time, and that we have just recently resumed those meetings?
That's correct.
So this is another change then that we're going to talk about with economic development, because I feel pretty strongly that the entire council needs to be involved in the economic development, and I'm afraid that if it gets sent to a committee, we won't prioritize it in the same way.
Okay, thank you for that suggestion. And Councilmember Blues?
I think the entire council should be involved in every issue that comes before it. And what we're proposing here is sharp focus by smaller standing committees, and before bringing them to the entire council. So, if we try to prioritize, if we try to gauge the importance of committee by the number of people on it, I think we get into trouble here. I think that what we're discussing is a new mechanism to do more work, more sharply focused, more attuned to the council's priorities, and economic development has been one. So it doesn't seem to me out of keeping to suggest that an 8th standing committee be added. So that's the rationale behind this motion or this amendment. Now, I do have a question about the amendment, where if it, whether or not it passes, it does seem to me that the number of persons on a committee is another issue and ought to be split out from the coming vote.
I would recommend that we do split this. I don't know if we need to do, maybe we'll vote on the amendment first, and then once we get back to the initial motion, we can discuss, Councilmember Lawless, whether or not it needs to be split, because the number might be something that committee members want to discuss a little bit more, where it seems like we're reaching consensus maybe with the standing committee names. Is there anyone else that has discussion on the amendment? Okay. Councilmember Myers, go. Okay. Do you have any more discussion on the amendment, Councilmember Myers? Okay. We'll vote at this time. All in favor of I'm sorry. No, this is the amendment that was offered by Councilmember Blues, seconded by Councilmember Myers, to add economic development as a standing committee. All in favor of the motion, please say aye. Any opposed? That passes. Back to the original motion, as amended motion. Councilmember Lawless. Councilmember Blues recommended that maybe it be split so that we could address the standing committees themselves and then address the number of committee members. Is that okay with you? Okay, so we'll go with that. So the motion on the floor at this time is to adopt the standing committees as such: Planning, Social Services, General Government, Public Safety, Public Works, Environmental Quality, Economic Development, and Budget and Finance. Any more discussion on that motion? Councilmember Gordon.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just, because there were questions and comments about issues in committee, it's serendipitous that Paul included on the last page the Planning Committee issues outstanding. And just a quick cursory look at this, the first 3 issues would go to Public Works. The fence regulations would go to Public Safety, probably. The management audit would probably go to Budget and Finance. Down toward the bottom, the Parks Master Plan would go to General Services. And the mobile food vendor permits, I'm not sure where that would go. And I'm not sure where permitting of yard sales would go, but I think those are clearly issues that would move to more appropriate standing committees, and I really like the realignment of the standing committees with the departments of government.
Thank you. Thank you for pointing that out, because that does help put it in perspective for us. Councilmember Feigl, you're on to speak. Did you have a comment? about the motion?
The only other comment is, having served on the planning committee, I think this is a good move too, because many times when we don't know where to put things, it kind of gets sent to planning. So this will kind of help us to identify where things are more logically placed.
Thank you. I'm just chuckling because that's good. Yeah. I just told her nobody's ever said that out loud before. Okay, so the motion right now is to accept the proposed standing committees as recommended. Is there any more discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? Okay. Now back to the issue of the number of committee members. Any comments, please just weigh in, even if it's, any recommendations, any thoughts at all on that number or a motion? Councilmember Myers.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move to adopt the 5-person committee.
There's a motion. Is there a second? A motion and a second. Any discussion? Councilmember Blues.
I thought that Councilmember Lawless's motion was still on the floor regarding the number 6.
She pulled it out.
Oh, she did?
Yes, she did. She agreed to pull that out.
Oh, okay.
And we separated it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And if I could clarify, we had a question over here, that the motion would be to adopt the number of committee members as written, and that will allow Budget and Finance to stay the way that we have
great.
it in here.
That'd be great.
So
Thank you. Did you accept that second? Did you understand what he just said, Councilmember Feigl? And instead of just specifying the number 5, it's all included committee members? Yes. Okay. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor of the motion, please say aye. Any opposed? None opposed. Great. That moves forward. The other, Councilmember Myers, was your intention with that last motion to, or maybe I should ask the committee, is there a need for us to have a vote on the makeup of the Budget and Finance Committee? It does state there are some changes to the makeup. It specifies that it'll consist of 10 council members, which we just approved, the 3 at-large council members, the chairman of the standing committees, and 1 district council member appointed in accordance with the Rule 2.101, which is where vice mayor appoints.
The only problem with that now, you've added an extra committee. You've added economic development.
True.
So I don't know where you want to pull that from. But
Let's see. Let's think about that. I guess we can take out the district. We'll remove the district council member.
So moved.
Okay.
you'll probably want a provision, though, that if a chair of one of the committees is also an at-large, that the vice mayor would pick a district councilor. That's how it reads now, I believe.
I'm looking to see if it's already included. Yes, it is included, and that language would not change. So the motion on the floor at this time is that we would have 3 at-large council members and the chairman of all the standing committees. Maybe that's the same as it is right now, so that doesn't have to be. Okay, all right. So we don't need a motion on that one. We don't need one on that. On page 7, there's some language. I'm sorry, Councilmember Lawless.
Excuse me. On page 6, it says, each council member shall be appointed to serve on 2 of these committees. We're going to have to change that to 3.
Is there a motion? That's the motion. Is there a second on the motion?
If there are there 40 total slots divided by 15? Is that, or how does this work?
Councilmember, there's 45 now with economic development.
Okay. Oh, gotcha. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. We've got a motion and a second. All in favor, or any discussion? Yes,
So
Councilmember
you're
Crosby.
saying that every council member would have to serve on 3 committees instead of 2 or 3?
That's correct.
There would be a total of 45 slots.
So everybody has to do 3 instead of what you said a few minutes ago of 2 or 3? I'm just trying to clarify, because a few minutes
Wait
ago...
a minute.
I don't know how you come to, I don't know how you get that because the chairs, I mean, the committees elect their chair. So it means the committees I don't know how you, everyone has to be on 3 because some won't be on 3 if they're not the chair of a committee. I mean, you might be appointed to 3 and then you're elected a chair of one of the 3, which means you're on 4 committees.
Okay, let's think through this.
Okay, where I got the number is, there are now 7 standing committees with 5 members each, plus 10. Okay, so that's 35 plus...
I don't believe you count the budget and finance. In the language here, if you read the language, it says we'll serve on 2 of these committees. It's not referring to
okay.
budget and
Okay.
finance. So maybe that's throwing us off a bit.
Yeah.
So how does that help? Let's process through that. It's saying of the aforementioned committees, you have to serve on 2 of those. You should be appointed to 2 of those. There's an opportunity that you'll be at a 3rd, but since we have added a standing committee,
You might want to, if I can offer, you might want to suggest you'll be on at least 2 because there are 35 appointments now
Right.
for 15 council members.
so the language should say she'll serve on at least 2. She'll be appointed to at least 2. Yes, Councilmember Gordon.
I'll ask the question out loud, which I believe the vice mayor is familiar with. If the council member refuses, which some have in the past, is that then up to the discretion of the vice mayor?
Is what up to discretion?
How many committees a council member serves on?
What do you do? Yeah, Vice Mayor, what do you do now or when that's happened? If it's happened.
Well, because, it's worked out pretty well, actually, because, you've got, we need to remember that by design, the council role was designed, as a citizen model, citizens participation, where people can have other jobs and be a council member. And it's part-time for some. For others, it's full-time. But there shouldn't, I don't feel like there should be a penalty on those who are trying to work this role part-time. So in encouraging participation, I certainly haven't been insistent, and it's worked out pretty well because the number of committees and the available council members has worked. So I admit to anxiety on these numbers and where they're going, and the requirement for 3 members. The requirement that each council member would have to serve on at least 3 committees, and at least 2, but you can't get the numbers without going to more being on 3.
I think we have.
Especially budget and finance, right?
Do we have council members now that don't serve on 2?
No, I think everybody serves on at least 2.
Okay.
But
Okay.
several serve on 3 and 4 and 5 if you count water resources and then once you go to, special task forces or
Okay.
special subcommittees, then you've got a whole lot more. This is just a question, was there any consideration of a convenient consolidation of a couple of these? When I think, for example, public safety, how often do we get issues routinely, regularly that we process in committee related to public safety?
Okay, you're talking about a couple of different things. So let's go back to the number, because that's kind of where we're focused, is the number of folks on there, and then we could talk about,
Okay, I'm just trying to find a solution that might
yeah.
help.
The one thing is, if it has to do with time, if the full plan goes through, we're eliminating a work session, 2 work sessions a month. So that actually frees some time that would have been occupied previously if the full plan goes through. So there are opportunities for efficiency and potential free time on that Tuesday, if that's a concern, if you're thinking about the time for folks. But I think we have to look at the number of people we're going to need that we know we're going to need to appoint to the committees. And so we're looking at the bare minimums right now. If somebody wants to do 5, that'd be great for them if it works, but we need to find a minimum of involvement and engagement from these citizen representatives for the standing committee, I think. So do you have anything else about the number of standing committees?
I don't see, or I see that being a problem, is what I'm saying. I see that
At
being
least
an issue.
2, if we said at least 2.
But it's going to require a number to be on 3 for it to work, isn't it, Paul?
With budget and finance? Okay. Yeah, with budget and finance. Okay. And that's if you're a chair, right? So,
I didn't follow that.
Budget and
entirely. Go
finance,
ahead.
if you're chair of a standing committee.
That's the reason I was asking earlier. We're going to move from 5, or effectively 5, including water resources, to 7 seemed like not a big stretch to me in terms of the permutations and the combinations of council members willing and able to serve on 7. Now we added economic development, which gives 8.
Okay. I have a list of folks, and I don't know if it's towards this particular issue or not. I can take Councilmember Gordon off, I guess. Councilmember Lawless? No. Councilmember Myers has a potential solution.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If we went with, everybody would serve on at least 2 of those first 6 committees. Okay, the first 6 committees. And then we've got economic development. If we put all 15 members on there, then the 6 would give us 30. And then that would give us the other 15, so everybody would serve on 3. And if you look at budget and finance, half the year, everybody's on there anyway. Half the year, we're looking at the budget. And so it goes into budget committee of the whole.
That's true. Okay. Did everybody understand that? So we have 15 on economic development, 10 on budget and finance, as it currently is, and then you said 6?
Well, there's 6 committees left
Okay.
out of the 8. And we'd have 5 people on each of those.
5 people on each, okay.
So that would put everybody on 2 of the 6. And then economic development. Everybody would be on. And then you might as well say everybody's on budget and finance anyway, because 6 months out of the year, we all are.
Okay. Thank you.
And most of the time, people come to those meetings anyway because they're interested in what's going on.
Okay. All right. Councilmember Lawless, did you have a comment about that?
Well, I thought we just voted to make economic development one of these.
We did, but now we ran into another issue, so that's just a solution for working that out.
Okay, so,
And we do have the purview to designate a number per the standing committee. So we could say we want 5 on one committee, 15 on another, even if it's a standing committee. So you can have a standing committee with 15 members.
okay, I don't see how that solves the concern that some people would have to serve on 3 committees because, okay.
Well, I thought it had to do with appointments. Just clarification, because if the 15 all serve, there's no appointment. So the appointments that come from vice mayor could be for the 2.
Correct.
Okay? So that actually does solve it. Councilmember Blues.
I still need to be clear on what Councilmember Myers is recommending. Are we moving up from 45 now to 55 committee positions? And
Yes.
that's solving a problem?
It's actually moving it to 60, isn't it?
You're right, 60. So I think we're, I don't think we're getting, toward a kind of coherent solution here at all. I think we're just trying to balance out numbers in some arbitrary way, and we're distorting the original premise, which is, which is in this case now 8 more sharply focused committees. So I'm not following this path very well, but I don't think I want to support this suggestion.
Thank you, Councilmember Blues. Any other discussion?
Can I respond to that?
Yep, push your button next time. Thank you.
Councilman Blues, I would agree with you on everything you said, except that if you take into consideration the fact that the full council voted earlier this year to have the full council on economic development, and that came after we did all of our research for this. So I don't think it moves away from our premise here. I just think that was a different priority that the council set, was that everybody be on economic development. And all we're doing is maintaining that.
Any other comments?
Well,
Councilman Blues?
no, I agree with that. It's just that it seems to me that given this proposed structure, a focused economic development committee bringing recommendations to the full council works just fine, or it should work just fine. If it doesn't, it calls into question the entire new structure. So that's why I'm not in accord with this motion, although I understand the purpose.
Councilmember Crosby?
I agree with Dr. Blues. Just based on, I think when we voted to make everybody on economic development, that we were doing it because there was such an interest to serve, but now that we're going to more committees and trying to be more focused, like you said, I think that perhaps trying to get a few people to be able to make recommendations and be more focused on it versus 15 people who are coming and going might be a better option, although I do like the fact that then it helps with the numbers on the committees. I think we can figure that out another way.
Just a point as the chair, just wrapping up some of the conversation. Councilmember Gordon talked earlier about engagement, involvement of committee members as things come forward to the full council. And I think where it seems as we've heard from Vice Mayor that maybe it's a little bit tough to ask people to serve on 3 committees, that really the committees are going to be the focus of our work right now. So just take that into consideration. That's kind of what I'm hearing as the chair. We want responsibility in the committees, but we're saying let's make it to where we have an option to do less work as council members. So as we're moving forward, just keep that in mind. Councilmember Lawless.
Okay. So what we're talking about now is 6 standing committees, or 7 standing committees. So 8, but that's made up. So there will be each council member will have to serve on at least 2, and I guess 5 would have to serve on 3. But we also are, like you said, taking out 2. We're having the CAL meeting twice a month instead of work session every week. And I know that and these meetings could all be on Tuesdays when we plan to be here. And while some people have jobs and devote less time, then you can take Tuesdays off. You're going to have to take Tuesdays off to be here, and it's time for people just to roll up their sleeves and man up, because some of us are on a lot of committees and task force, et cetera, and I think that people shouldn't be allowed to refuse. If they refuse, they get their name in the paper on the front page in 12-point type.
Thank you, Councilmember Lawless.
And I'll pay the extra for the big type.
Any other discussion, Councilmember Blues?
Well, we could have public stocks right up here in front of the horseshoe.
Did you have a real comment?
No, I think that's all.
Okay. Is there a motion on the table? Because I'm not aware of one, but I think we've had some really good discussion. Is there any motion regarding the motion that George said, and that you second, was to have 15 and 10, right? The 15 and 5. Can you restate the motion?
Actually, I think I'm going to withdraw the motion.
Okay.
It was just a solution to try to equal out the numbers.
Sure.
But I do understand that I do like the focused economic development committee, and that is what we're trying to do here. So I think I'll just withdraw the motion, and we'll try to come up with another way to have parity.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, thank you. Are there then any recommendations, since we've withdrawn that will get us to the parity? None? Oh, Councilmember Lawless.
All we have to say is serve on at least 2 committees.
Okay. Is that a
Because
motion?
there's quite a few of us that already serve on 3 committees.
Is that a motion? Serve on at
motion.
least 2 committees. A motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right. Thank you. That passes. Pages 7 and 8 talk about each of the committees, and I'm thinking we're going to need an additional description for economic development. I think we did. Is Joe go back upstairs? Okay. We're working on, we're looking for the language to define the role of Economic Development Committee, the standing committee. So we'll have Joe work on that, and then we'll start going through each one of these. That way, if there's anything we're missing or any changes we need to make, we can do that at this time. The first one is planning. So number 1 on page 7 says Planning and Zoning Committee, to which shall be referred matters relating to the divisions of planning and including but not limited to matters related to housing, infill and redevelopment, PDR, purchase of development rights, and historic preservation. Is there a motion to accept that language? There's a motion to accept that language. Is there a second? Okay. Motion and a second. Councilmember Gordon.
I just had a comment. One of the things that traditionally Planning Committee has done that's not listed in here is the goals and objectives of the comprehensive plan, which is every 5 years. So I don't know if
I think
you
that would.
want to add that. Do you think that's covered in matters relating to the division of planning?
I believe it is.
Okay. All right.
Yes.
Thank you.
Councilmember Lawless.
It seems like we're kind of aligning these with the different commissioners and divisions of government. So wouldn't building inspection be in there also?
I believe you're right. I think let's see.
Number 6 on the next page, Public Works includes everything in Public Works except for planning, PDR, and historic preservation, including including building inspection.
Oh, do you see that? Okay, so they've coupled building inspection under the Public Works Committee and pulled planning out basically from that division of government, given it its own committee. But we can discuss if we feel like it
I
needs
was
to
just
be.
confused because it seemed like we were trying to do it with each commissioner or.
It probably has to do with the amount of items
Okay,
that are
I'm
dealing with
fine.
planning. Are you okay with the way it is? Okay.
It just kind of.
Okay. Any other discussion about number 1?
I'm sorry. I do feel like it should be the things that go with that commissioner. In other words,
So you want to move everything over to,
well, I mean, that particular division of government has so much stuff, maybe it doesn't make sense, but
okay.
okay, I'm fine.
I'm open for a motion if anyone wants to say. I would also ask for Councilmember Gorton to maybe weigh in as chair of the planning for a while. How do you feel as far as the workload?
Well, I guess my question would be the reason for placing it where it is, since the original premise was to align standing committees with government departments.
I believe that, as Councilmember Meyer said earlier, that was the basis of it, but that wasn't everything consistently that way.
So some have been selectively placed in committees that don't realign it.
Like planning.
Uh-huh.
Planning was
So
pulled
it's not a
separate.
true, yeah. I think for every standing committee, it will be somewhat more efficient to deal with all those things in that department, but, I don't have any strong feelings one way or another. Were there other things pulled out individually?
No, see, those are all with,
Those are
the
all
thing that was
public
pulled out
works.
was planning because of the planning committee workload. So visualize, and maybe we can talk about this, to visualize the planning and public works together. How do you feel about those items to be addressed?
That is too much. That is too much, is my opinion.
Councilmember, I'm sorry. Go
Can I
ahead.
weigh in?
We'll hear from Paul from the research first.
Councilmember, it's been a while since we've looked at this originally, but I believe this was somewhat your, not insistence, but your recommendation that we pull planning issues out, just because in the planning committee, most of the issues relate to,
Actual plan.
Right.
Yes. I think combining it with Public Works would be way too much for one standing committee.
So that's how we got to where we are, is because you were saying that in planning there was too much.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Crosby.
Yeah, I was just going to say, too, it's being changed to Planning and Zoning Committee, so you're still going to have so much to deal with, I think, within that. So based on what Paul said, I would definitely think these two should be separate.
Okay, thank you. No. Okay, so we've got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, we'll take a vote. All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Going down to number 2, this says the Social Services Committee, to which shall be referred matters relating to partner agencies and the Department of Social Services and its divisions. Is there a motion to accept that recommendation? There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Councilmember Lawless.
I would like to take out partner agencies that are not related to social services, such as DDA, Commerce Lexington, maybe LexArts. I'm just trying to think off the top of my head, that really are more about economic development than they are about social services.
Is that a motion?
Yes, I guess. I move that any non-social service outside partner agency be put into the Economic Development Committee.
There's a motion to remove the partner agencies not related to social services. Is there a second on that? And a second. Any discussion? Councilmember Myers.
Sorry about that. Probably need a little more clarification on that, because there are some partner agencies that don't relate to social services, but they also don't relate necessarily to economic development. So maybe could we maybe amend that to say, because each partner agency has somebody in this government under the administration to which it reports, whether it's a commissioner or someone appointed by the commissioner. So maybe the best thing to do would be to look at where that report is and put it under that specific committee. Does that make sense? Instead of just moving them all to economic development, that we look at who that partner agency reports to inside the administration, and whoever that person in the administration reports to, they would fall under that standing committee.
Go ahead.
That's fine. It just doesn't make sense to me to have LexArts and Commerce Lexington in the Social Services Committee. And
Right.
I was just trying to think off the top of my head what the outside partner agencies were. So
Okay.
I'm fine with that.
So your motion.
My motion is that partner agencies that are not related to social services be placed in the appropriate standing committee.
Okay. Councilmember Crosby.
Oh, I'll keep my second. I was just going to ask her if she was if she would amend her motion. Sorry.
Okay. Any more discussion on that? Everyone clear on the motion? All in favor of the motion, please say aye. Any opposed? Okay. Page 8, number 3. This is the General Government Committee, to which shall be referred matters relating to the general administration of government, the Department of Law, the Department of General Services, and each department's respective divisions. Is there a motion? A motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? Number 4 on page 8. This just goes, I guess there needed to be some clarification on the Budget and Finance, and this is added here. The Budget and Finance Committee, to which shall be referred matters relating to the Department of Finance and Administration and the divisions of the Urban County Courts and Constitutional Officers. Is there a motion? A motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? Number 5 is Public Safety Committee, to which shall be referred matters relating to the Department of Public Safety and its divisions. Is there a motion? A motion and a second. Is there a discussion on the Public Safety Committee? All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? That passes. Number 6 is the Public Works Committee, to which shall be referred matters relating to capital improvement projects, divisions of streets, roads, and forestry, engineering, building inspection, and traffic engineering. Is there a motion? A motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? That passes. Number 7 is the Environmental Quality Committee, to which shall be referred matters relating to the Department of Environmental Quality and its divisions. Motion? A motion and a second. Is there any discussion on this? environmental quality. All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? Do we have any language on economic development yet? You want to ad-lib it? Anybody want to take a stab at a environmental quality motion? I'm sorry, environmental quality, economic development.
Well, I might start with, I'm sorry, didn't ask for.
No, go right ahead.
Thank you, Chair. I would guess this would be a committee to which would be referred matters relating to the Office of the Director of Economic Development. I'm not sure of the wording here, but it would seem to me that that committee would be the first to review TIF applications and proposals, or to initiate them. It would also, the Commerce Lexington as partner agency would come under the aegis of that committee, and so there are other things, but I'm not thinking of them right at the moment. But I think that's
Okay.
that's certainly some content.
Okay. Do we want to get specific with? Okay, so is it Economic Development Committee to which shall be referred matters referred from the Office of, did you say referred from the Office of Economic Development?
Related to the
Related to.
Office of the Director of Economic Development.
Okay.
And maybe you need to start another sentence to the Economic Development Committee will be referred all matters related to TIF applications. Commerce Lexington. I'm sorry.
Yay.
Yeah, we haven't
Well,
decided on DDA yet.
I think I'd put it in, and then we can talk about taking it out. I mean, if that.
Well, we're already talking about that in the partner agency, so we'll have to decide through the partner agency
Yes.
where it should go anyway. So would you also say, and all other matters related to economic development? Okay. Okay. So there's we have a motion. Is there a second on that?
Before we finalize that,
Yeah.
can we add some language in there to say, including but not limited to?
Okay, where do you want that to go? Okay. 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 The Economic Development Committee, to which shall be referred matters related to the Office of Economic Development, including but not
Director of-
limited to
Office of the Director.
the Office of the Director of Economic Development, including but not limited to TIF projects, Commerce Lexington, and all matters related to, and other matters, all and other matters related to economic development. Okay. Hope somebody got that. At this point, because it's being dealt with under the recommendation of the partner agency, it's included as a partner agency. So we're going to have to decide, right, we had the recommendation that said that all be removed, all partner agencies not under social services would need to be placed under. And I'm thinking, is Anthony Wright the contact for DDA? Okay, so it probably will fall under this. Do we want to specify DDA?
Well, I'm sorry, Madam Chair.
Okay.
If we specify Commerce Lexington, then I think we should specify DDA. If we don't want to specify one, we shouldn't specify the other.
Okay. Councilmember Crosby?
I was just, why are we making this more difficult? Why can't we just say like what number 7 says and say economic development committee to which shall be referred matters from the director of economic development and all other related economic development. I don't know how you put it, but I mean, I don't think we need to be specific because you're with the different partner agencies like Commerce Lexington and DDA, because you're already going to put them under these. We're not doing it for the other partner agencies, listing them specifically. So I don't see why we're doing it with this one. And I think listing TIF as well. I mean, I would assume that would be a economic development function, so they would automatically fall in this committee. It doesn't need to be defined. It's already a function of economic development.
Are you offering a motion that amends a motion?
Yes,
Okay.
I guess I don't see, or then if you do have a project, for example, a TIF project that needs to be somewhere else, like budget and finance first, because we go back and forth between those committees of where it needs to go. You're not limiting yourself to that one area, that one standing committee.
What's your substitute motion or your
My
amended
substitute motion is to keep it simple, to say, I don't know what, unfortunately, I don't know what it says, but I would remove the language. And
Okay, someone, if you want to, do you want to read that?
yeah, once you have Councilmember Feigl
Councilmember
read
Feigl has an idea.
what I'm trying to say, because she has it written down. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I think what she's trying to say is economic development issues related to the Office of the Director of Economic Development and all other matters related to economic development.
Okay. Is there a second on that one?
Second.
Okay. And Councilmember Myers.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My concern would be that with this particular one, there's not a division of government to align it to. And so I'm okay with the way the original language read without this amendment.
Councilmember Crosby.
So I guess educate me as to where does economic development fall now? It's with the administration, right? That's who Anthony Wright. Yeah, so I would say then that it does have a direct link to one of the areas.
I think he was just referring to, like, say, budget and finance, public works, those divisions.
See, these are agencies outside of the government. All these other ones, water quality and all these are parts of government, and they fall into that division of government. These are outside of the government, and there is no division that's over that.
What I don't exactly get what you're saying. There's no division with economic development that falls under. So I mean, I guess my point is, does economic development who does Anthony currently report to?
Directly to the mayor. There is no division of government that does economic
I understand
development.
that, but it's still, I mean, there's still a direct link with the administration. So I guess my point is, there is a link somewhere. It's with the administration versus the different divisions within. Does that make sense?
But I think the difference, just for clarity, is that there's no commissioner. There's no commissioner of economic development. So there's not a lead.
I understand. So then maybe this shouldn't be a standing committee if that's exactly what you're trying to do. If that is your point, that it has to be tied into a commissioner, then maybe this doesn't need to be a standing committee and put it under budget and finance.
Councilmember Henson.
I was going to suggest that we word it just like the Social Services Committee, where, and it talks, the Economic Development Committee, to which will be referred economic matters and relating to partner agencies within economic development.
Basically what it says.
And I would also like, well, that's not on the motion, I'll bring that up later, but I think partner agencies should be in there, but not a specific agency.
Okay, so we could, what you're recommending is saying, including the partner agencies related to economic development.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay. Well, it would have to be an amendment to the motion that's already out. And that was made by Councilmember Crosby and seconded by Councilmember Feigl.
This is the one that I seconded.
Actually, I might just withdraw. Well, I mean, I'll keep my motion on the table. I guess you can vote on it. But I'm starting to even rethink whether or not economic development is legitimately a standing committee or whether it should not be part of budget and finance, because everything we do in almost a majority of these committees is economic development. And so, I mean, it's vital, but yet I guess I just don't know how it fits in as a separate standing committee. And that's what I think the vice mayor was saying before he had to step out. So I'll keep my motion, and maybe it's something that if it passes, we'll just bring up with full council.
Okay, the motion as it stands right now is that Economic Development Committee, to which shall be related matters related to the Office of the Director of Economic Development, including but not limited to, and what it says now is DDA. No, it says Commerce Lexington and all other matters related to economic development. Councilmember Henson just suggested that instead of specifying an agency name, that we say matters related to economic development, including partner agencies focused on economic development. Councilmember Lawless.
I agree with that, because also I would think TIF would come in under that, and so.
You agree with the amendment or with the original motion?
I agree with without naming them, the partner agencies or issues having to do with
Just to leave it
development.
bland. Okay. So was that a motion, Councilmember Henson, when you suggested that to amend it? Okay, you've got your second. Any discussion on the amendment? You want to discuss the amendment?
The amendment is to put in partner agencies, right? And
Yes.
leave out the specifics.
Yep, the amendment is to leave out the specific word TIF and the specific word DDA and the specific word Commerce Lexington.
Yeah, I want to speak to that.
Okay, Councilmember Feigl.
Because the TIF projects are a relatively new animal for us to deal with, so far we haven't been bombarded with them. But I think that it might be helpful to us at some point in the future to have this designated to at least be introduced the first time to a committee. And from that committee, then it can be determined whether it goes to Budget and Finance or if it goes on to the full council. But at least as a way of introducing the TIF projects, I think it would be helpful to have it designated to a specific committee.
Okay. Thank you for that. Any other comments? We've got a motion on the floor. The motion, if anybody needs to be restated, I will. If not, we'll call for a vote. All in favor of the motion, please say aye. Oh.
I was just going to ask if you could please restate it. I'm
Oh.
sorry, I took my name.
The Economic Development Committee, to which shall be referred matters related to the Office of the Director of Economic Development, comma, partner agencies related to economic development, and all other matters related to economic development.
That's it.
All right. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
Okay, one opposition, and that passes. Two oppositions.
We can decide.
Councilor Myers, do you have a comment?
Excuse me. We have a question over here. Is where does the TIF, how is that going to be defined and where does it end up going?
That's a matter related to economic development.
Okay.
So that would fall under this committee.
We just took it out.
We didn't take it out. We said in all matters related to economic development.
We just didn't name any of them. And we can change it if it isn't working.
Right. Well, we didn't, is everybody clear that partner agencies was separate and then it was in all other matters related to economic development? Okay. Is everybody good? Okay. All right. Page 9. I'm on the right page. This is under the section related to rules and procedures related to meetings. And I'll read it, and then we can have discussion on it. The regular meetings of all standing committees shall be held on the dates, times, and locations specified in a schedule of meetings adopted annually by the council by ordinance.
Second.
There's a movement and a second. Any discussion? Councilmember Gordon.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just had a comment about location, because on page 3 of the packet, one of the comments is that standing committees will generally be held in the 5th floor conference room. And then at the bottom, all COWs and committees of the whole and standing committees will be televised. I know that Commissioner Rama has said he can televise in the 5th floor conference room, but personally, I think it does not lend itself to good coverage of meetings. So I'm wondering if standing committees wouldn't be more appropriate in the council chamber. It's a question to be discussed, I think.
It is, and just unless I'm missing it, the location is not mentioned in this resolution.
But
It's
it is
only
on the-
specified, right?
Yeah.
That's not those are the recommendations, but that's not the resolution that we're passing today. So the location would actually be part of the council calendar of where we specify that meeting, but that's not denoted by the resolution.
Okay, thank you.
Unless as a committee, we want to specify a location.
Well, this page 3 says these are proposed recommendations from the subcommittee. So I would just simply make that comment to be discussed at some point in the future then.
Okay, probably at the time when we're passing the calendar and discussing location would be good.
So that's not.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any more discussion on section 2.202? All in favor of the motion, please say aye. Any opposed? And that passes. Section 2.204, this is the section that talks about, is reference of the matters to committee, and I'll read it in its entirety. The mayor or vice mayor may refer any item directly to committee. Any council member may request the vice mayor to refer items to committee. Otherwise, items shall be referred to committee at a committee of the whole meeting or an official session by a majority vote. All items which are sent directly to committee through the vice mayor shall be included as information in the packet and notice given the committee of the whole meeting. Is there a motion? There's a motion and a second, and I see some discussion. Councilmember Blues.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a little problem with changing the nomenclature here, the body of the council from the work session to committee of the whole, and assuming that we would still have quarterly meetings of the committee of the whole to discuss various issues not related to any of this in particular, it seems to me that that's going to be kind of confusing. So it strikes me that we could leave the term work session, or if there's some more apt identification. But work session seems to me to aptly describe what we would be doing. We'd be putting the docket together. So I make a motion to leave the name as it is, that rather than committee of the whole here, the meetings preceding every council meeting will be work sessions. So moved.
There's a motion and a second to amend to change from the suggested a committee of the whole meeting to work session. It would actually leave it the same. So actually what you would do is we would just eliminate the whole thing. So you would just be withdrawing.
Yeah.
You would just
in
be
other words,
voting down.
It's a motion to retain the original language of 2204.
Okay. Councilmember Lawless?
It seems to me that Committee of the Whole is a more appropriate name, or council, the Urban County Council meeting, rather than a work session. Committee of the Whole meeting.
Okay. And this is discussion on the amendment. Well, I need some clarification, because if the item at hand is to amend the existing language, the motion that came forward was to accept the language as written, and then your amendment is to go back. So do we really need your amendment? You would just be voting up or down on the Committee of the Whole language. Okay, so
That
we don't
works
need that
too.
amendment.
Sure.
Okay. I think everybody's speaking on this.
So that anybody, I was previously asking to vote, yes on changing it to work session, should now vote no on making any change.
That's correct.
Just ask a point of
You've got a point of order?
question regarding his motion before with the meetings, the way you have them set up, is it not going to be Committee of the Whole now? That's what it's called, twice a month, and then council workshop? That's what I'm looking at, is this little, so Committee of the Whole, instead of having one quarterly, based on this calendar, we'd now be having two, and then two a month, and then council workshop. So there would not just be one quarterly meeting, correct?
The council workshop is a plug-in. That's not a regular meeting.
But the Committee of the Whole is a regular meeting, and that's what's basically taking place of work session.
That's correct.
So we wouldn't want, so what, okay, well, my question.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Henson.
Thank you, Chair. I agree with Councilmember Blues that I think it should remain work session. And the Committee of the Whole should be used to meet quarterly and address other issues related to the council. So I would vote against changing this from work session, even though I know the work sessions would take place twice a month. But just instead of the name of the Committee of the Whole, it would remain work session.
Thank you, Councilmember Henson. Councilmember Feigl.
Thank you, Chair. There are a couple of differences, I think, that we need to point out. I think according to our council rules, the work session, the Committee of the Whole will be chaired by the Vice Mayor. Is that not correct? That's correct. The Committee of the Whole is chaired by the Vice Mayor. Work session at this point is chaired by the Mayor. The other thing that, and I wish Logan was here from the Law Department, but Glenda, you might be able to comment on this, that the work session in our council rules is kind of ambivalent on some council rules. I mean, at least not clear about some of the rules. At least that's been my discussion with Logan, is that because it is, it's an unusual animal and that the council rules are not clear about how this should be done or how different situations are handled. And I don't have an example. I wish I had an example, but
did you want someone to respond, to try to, or did you just want to?
Yeah, I think she's texting Logan to,
Okay.
to come in. But that's one of the things that we certainly need to be aware of if that is the case, because there would be a couple of differences here, because the committee of the whole would maybe follow different rules and procedures in our council rules than a work session might.
Okay, we'll go ahead and take other comments and then come back to you when we get a response from law. Councilmember Myers?
I'm going to support this motion, and the main reason is because of what's coming next in section 4.104. And I think we'll see that when we move through this document, it's a complete package, and that section 2.204 needs to be changed in order to work with the rest of the changes that we have coming down the pike. Thank you.
Okay, good point. We should have pointed that out earlier. Councilmember Lawless?
Yes, I'd like some clarification on this. The way I'm reading this, it says the mayor or vice mayor may refer any item directly to committee. Any council member may request the vice mayor to refer items to the committee. Otherwise, items shall be referred to committee at a committee of the whole. So we can still refer, okay. All items which are sent directly to committee through the vice mayor should be included as information in the packet and notice given at the work session, at the committee of the whole. So I think we're moving, one of the things that this is doing is moving us more toward being a legislative body. And I would like to take out the word mayor may refer any item directly to the committee of the whole. The mayor can ask a council person who's the legislator to make that referral or walk it on, but it seems to me that that doesn't follow the kind of direction we're going, which most other communities, states, and of checks and balances, where we have a legislative body and an administrative body.
Okay.
So I guess my motion would be, is there a motion on the floor?
There is a motion on the floor, and I was going to ask if what the motion does, it changes the name, basically it changes the name of work session to committee of the whole. I was going to ask that if we could deal with that as a separate issue.
Okay.
Okay. So we'll keep the motion on the floor right now. We'll be changing the item, and we'll deal with the other issue later, but right now, replacing the word work session with a committee of the whole meeting.
Okay.
And do you want to say something before Logan speaks? Okay. Logan, did you know what question we have for you?
I don't. I heard my name mentioned, and I started down, then I got a couple of messages to get on down here, so I'm sorry I didn't hear the question.
Councilmember Feigl had a question.
Okay.
The discussion is related to whether or not to change the name of the committee for work session to committee of the whole,
Okay.
rather than work session. And what I was trying to share is some conversations that you and I have had about council rules and how they apply to work session and how they apply to committee of the whole. And my understanding of our conversation was that sometimes council rules are not as clear about work session issues as they need to be. I don't know if I
think I understand what you're saying.
I don't think I'm probably reflecting your comments accurately, but at
Well,
least
I'm trying
that
to
was my
recall the
perception.
conversation. It's not coming to mind, but I do recall we discussed rules that apply at council meetings and rules that apply at work sessions. And I believe that the council rules address both in some fashion, but whether the rules apply at a committee of the whole meeting, I'm not sure about that. Was that part of your question, too?
No, not necessarily.
Okay.
I think my question was, is there some reservation in, maybe that's not the right word, is there some reservation in your mind about how council rules apply to work sessions?
I'm not aware of any, I'm sorry, Councilmember Feigl, I'm just not recalling that conversation.
Okay.
It seems like we did have an issue come up one day in a meeting, and I believe Councilmember Ellinger asked for a ruling on something, and I can't recall the issue, and the issue was whether that particular rule, I think, applied during a work session maybe. I'm not sure, but we concluded that it did, and I think Councilmember Stinnett was involved in looking at that as well, but I can't recall what it was.
I remember what it was. It had to do, if the vice mayor were the chair, could he also vote? So if the vice mayor were sitting in at a work session for the mayor, was he considered a chair and a non-voting member at that time, or was he part of the voting group? So that was what that was.
Yeah. I know there are sometimes procedural issues that come up. For instance, if something's already on the docket, you all have approved something to go to the docket for a regular meeting. Can you do a motion to table, for instance, at a work session? You know, we've had issues, procedural issues like that come up, and that might be what we were discussing. But the broader question about can you do away with work sessions, the answer is yes. I mean, that's clearly a creature of council rule. The only thing the charter requires is that you have 2 council meetings a month. And so however you set up whatever other meetings you want to have, what you call them, the committee structure and all of that, it's all council rule and up to you how you want to do that. Now, I will tell you that the committee of the whole is specifically referenced in the council rules and how that operates, but I don't know that there would be anything there that would conflict with what I think you all are talking about. Councilmember James's work from last year.
There's nothing that would conflict with what is being proposed here today?
Well, I have not heard all the discussion here today. I do remember we have a resolution on the council rule revisions that you and Councilmember Lawless and I worked on, and then the ones that Councilmember James advanced last year, and I'm not as familiar with those. But I think Glenda may be.
Did you have anything else for
No.
Commissioner? Okay, thank
Thank
you.
you.
Councilmember Myers? Okay, Councilmember Blues?
Thank you. My only concern here is to keep things straight and separate. And I know that there are issues that we take up at quarterly committee of the whole meetings, Citizens Advocate report. We're currently taking up the core the core staff administration in the council office and so on that aren't fitting into this scheme. So it does seem to me that heading should be reserved for those quarterly meetings, and that there's no real reason no compelling reason to change the terminology here to describe what will be the bi-monthly meetings to establish the docket for council meetings.
Councilmember Feigl?
Just in response to the quarterly meetings, I don't really believe that this would preclude us from dealing with any kind of issues that have previously come to us on a quarterly basis. In fact, it might expedite some of those issues if we are meeting more frequently than quarterly. So I see this as a benefit to us in dealing with extra issues because we're meeting more frequently.
Okay, thank you. One thing that I will point out, which is maybe neither here nor there, but with our current committee of the whole, we do have quarterly, but we also have them as we need to call them as well. So right now we do have varied committee of the whole meetings, and we can also offer agenda items for that. So kind of the process we've laid out for this, we can give those items to Vice Mayor Gray as Kelly, who's coming to talk about retail. That was something that came out of discussion that council talked about. So I think that committee of the whole structure leads to that sort of recommendation, ability of the council members to initiate that, which maybe could happen with a different name too, but that's just the way it works now. So the item on the table now is a change of the name from work session to committee of the whole. Is there any further discussion? All in favor of the change, please say aye. Aye. Are there any opposed? No. Got 2 against. Wow, okay. That passes. Okay, committee, let's take a look at, we only have little ways to go. I don't know how much detailed information let's just try it. We've got 9 minutes.
We were going to separate out
Oh,
the
yes.
mayor thing.
Would you like to make a motion?
Yes, I would like to move that we strike the mayor. That doesn't sound nice. Nothing personal, it's just policy and procedure and process.
The word mayor.
Yes, that it be, that paragraph start with the vice mayor may refer.
Okay. There's a motion that the language of mayor or be stricken from the section 2.204. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Councilmember Crosby?
Would you then add in the next sentence, the mayor or any council member may request the vice mayor to refer items to committee?
Would you accept that? Okay.
Yes, please.
All right. Any further discussion? Vice Mayor?
Yeah, I'm just curious as to the procedurally, what does this help me? I'm trying to think since I've got that role right now. What would that represent in terms of just, Councilmember Gordon, you're
She
good
hit
at
her
this
button quickly.
You're good at this procedure
did
stuff,
you see
so
me
help me. Yes,
bingo
ma'am, I did.
Councilmember Gordon?
Well, it happens right now when either the mayor, the administration asks a council member to walk on an issue, or you are asked to place something in a committee, or I think it's not really that much different from what we do now.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Other discussion? All right, we'll take a vote. All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? All right, that passes unanimously. Section 4 deals with rules and procedures, and used to be work session is now replaced with the word committee of the whole. And here you go. Here would be the format of the committee of the whole agenda. So as you talk about where would things go and how would be placed, this is how that would fill in. I can read all of this. It really is a replacement of committee of the whole everywhere where it said work session. Nothing changes. Of course, if you look at the agenda items, you can see the process there. There's the public comment, the approval of the summary, the same process, docket approval. There's some things that are stricken there, but the new business items, continuous business is there, council report is there, public comment, and again, a replacement of work session with committee of the whole. We've got a motion and a second to approve the entirety of section 104, which would take us through the rest of the packet. Any discussion? Councilmember Blues.
Thank you, Chair. I have a concern about item F at the top of page 12, and which reads, before acting on a motion to approve the docket, any individual item listed for first reading shall be removed upon the request of any council member. Items so requested shall be removed and added to new business as separate agenda items. It seems to me it would be that the transaction involved here would be clearer if we said that any individual item listed for first reading shall be deferred upon the request of any council members. Items so deferred shall be added to new business as separate agenda items.
Okay.
We're not really removing them. We're simply deferring them, moving them for further discussion. So that's my motion.
There's a motion and a second to change the language in F. Any discussion on that amendment to that language? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, good. Any further discussion on the Section 104 amendment or motion? If not, all in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? Passes. Thank you all very much. That was it. We did it from top to bottom, didn't we? Councilmember Lawless?
I have a question. Will the council clerk still be staffing the council of the whole meetings?
The committee of the whole meetings?
Yeah, whatever. The cows.
The council clerk? Is that who you meant to say?
Yeah, I mean, is that, and did we clarify if the vice mayor was, as chair, would be voting?
Oh, yeah, that was
Okay.
only in that case
Okay.
before. We actually have in this committee, there's a recommendation from Susan Lamb's office and Commissioner Askew that we're going to need to discuss, that we'd like
thanks.
to discuss. We don't have time at this point
That's
to do
fine.
that.
I just wanted to clarify.
But I'm thinking about calling a special meeting of intergovernmental before we break.
This issue, I just heard something about the presiding officer at a committee of the whole meeting, and there may be an issue with that.
Okay.
So I don't know, I'm not,
We can research it. Yeah, because in committee of the whole right now, I believe he votes.
no, I think the issue is who presides over a meeting where there's docket approval done,
Okay.
which is a different issue than what we've got right now. So I'm not sure, but I can get you some information about that.
And I am going to look for a meeting date for a special meeting before we break. It'll be tough to do. Councilmember Gordon.
I had a quick procedural question. If, okay, you'll be reporting this out to council.
Yes.
And is the hope that this will be worked into enough detail that it will take effect January, or are you hoping to take some time to work out all the detail?
My goal would be January as far as a calendar is concerned. We know that Susan's going to panic about some of the clerk issues, but we will need to work some of those things out. But there are certain processes that can go ahead and be enacted as we phase other things in.
So we need to ask the council, if this passes council with first and second reading, then we need to pass a calendar before we go on break,
Yes.
which will need to be redone.
Yes.
Okay.
Susan, is there something urgent that you need?
I was just wanting to make sure that it was understood that the council clerk's office does not staff the committee of the whole.
Oh, she's meant to say council administrator.
all right.
Sorry.
Just wanna make sure.
All right. Okay, be looking at your calendars for any free dates, because we're going to probably need to meet again. A motion?
Motion to adjourn?
All right, motion and a second. All in favor? Aye.